Good evening. We have a quorum present at 6:01, so I will call the February 8th, 2022 regular meeting of the Windham Southeast School District Board to order at 6:01. There will be occasional breaks as I let more people into the meeting, but we will get underway. The first order of business is we have scheduled our next board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday of vacation week. So I'm looking at March 1st as an alternative, which happens to also be town meeting day, but nobody is holding town meetings on town meeting day. And it's also election day, which I also don't think is really a reason to not hold our meeting. So, and I know we're gonna have things that we're gonna want to follow up on from this meeting. And it'd also be nice to get the election results all at the same time if possible. And the vote on the budget as well. So I'm tentatively scheduling our next meeting for March 1st. If anyone struggles with that, let me know and I'll send an email around and have Barb do the same. So any questions from or thoughts from the board about March 1st or any obvious problems with that to keep me from spending a lot of time on something that's impossible? Okay, we'll see if we can make that work. So the first item or second item is the consent agenda. We have a clerk's report. I'm going to wait a minute for Sean to get here because he had a question about the clerk's report. Sean, are you here? You're muted, Sean.
I just arrived.
Oh, great. You had a question about the minutes. Did you contact one and get that squared away, or is that something we need to take up?
I'm not actually sure of the answer. I think maybe it didn't have to be voted on. It wasn't tabled, so I'm not sure. I don't know the intricacies of Robert's rule.
Okay, because I got that late today and I didn't have a chance to look at it. So we will leave the minutes of January 25th unapproved, and we would ask for a consent agenda vote to approve the December 14th meeting minutes and the warrants of January 18th, January 24th, January 31st, and payrolls for January 14th and January 28th. Could I have a motion to that effect, please?
So made.
Thank you, Tim. And seconded by Thomas?
Yes.
Moved by Tim, seconded by Thomas. Sean, another question?
Yes, thank you. I did look on the website for the minutes of December 14th, and there were no minutes posted on the website for that day. Because I hadn't read them yet, so.
Okay, so let's remove from the motion, the consent agenda motion, the minutes altogether, just the warrants from January 18th, January 24th, January 31st, and payrolls of the 14th and 28th. And we'll look into that with Barb and find out what's up. Thank you. So moved by, is the motion still Tim and Thomas? Is that okay, changing that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion is to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please unmute and indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Okay, before I move on, I just want to check the attendance here. I see that we have a couple of candidates for board, and I want to see if there are any others that I'm missing. Wow, a lot of people. Well, I see that Deborah Stanford and Lana Devers are here. I don't see Mr. Wheeler or Mr. Chase, but I will keep looking. I just wanted to ask them if they just would like to introduce themselves and just say a quick word or two about why you're interested in the board, as long as you have a captive audience at this point. Deborah, why don't you go ahead? You're muted, unfortunately.
Okay, better?
There you go.
Better. Okay. So Deborah Stanford, I'm a resident in Dummerston. And I simply want to say, as an educator, I have so much respect for everyone who contributes to the growth of students during these trying times. My priority is the safety of students. And only when the emotional and social welfare of every student is ensured, only then can active learning take place. I am looking forward to my continued presence at board meetings, hopefully as the Dummerston elected director. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Lana, Deborah, would you like to say a little?
Sure. That was fantastic, Deborah. You're a tough act to follow. I'm glad I'm not running against you. I'm Lana Dever, and I'm running for the Brattleboro seat. I'm a longtime Brattleboro resident, and I have served my community in many capacities. I currently do so as a youth homelessness caseworker with Youth Services in Brattleboro. And I want to continue my work with our community and with those of us who are most impacted, certainly by the current moment, but also by everything that goes on within our schools and within our homes and our systems. And I'm really excited about the work that this board has been doing. I've been enjoying listening and attending these meetings, and I hope to continue to do so, with or without being a board member.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just want to point out that both of these seats are contested, and I looked again and I do not see either of the other contestants on, but they're certainly welcome to introduce themselves if they come. And the ballots, I believe, are, if they're not available today, they will be within the next couple of days. So early balloting and absentee balloting is underway. Thank you. So next on the agenda is policy review. This is something I'd like us to try and do on a regular basis. At the beginning of the year, we went through 9 policies that are, I'm going to hold that because here is Peter Case. And I'm going to give him a moment. Liz, why don't you have a question while we wait for Peter to get in?
Yeah, Nader Hashim is here too.
He's not
and he's
running for
running-
school board, Liz.
Oh, right, sorry.
Thank you. Peter Case, I see you've joined us and you came at a perfect moment because I just asked candidates to introduce themselves and say a few words. So if you would like to do that, please do.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Put you
Sorry, I
on the
wasn't-
spot right away.
You can bang right out of the gate. Here we go. All right, right out of the pan into the fire. Well, for those that don't know me, I'm Peter Case. I'm also known as Fish in the Brattleboro community and throughout Windham County. I'm hoping to be elected to the open chair seat here in Brattleboro. You know, I'm also hoping to establish more of a communication between the board and the community at large, be it administrators, kids, or the people that have to pay the taxes to support the budget. Short of that, I'm really looking forward to working hard if I get elected and kind of making a run at it. It's sort of a position I've been questioned over and over and over again as to why I would want to do it. People have told me that there are way more honorable deaths, but I disagree. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, I'm going to return to the agenda, and it was the policy review of policy. And this week it's G1 curriculum and curriculum development coordination. So I want to just share the screen. This is a brief one that was added not that many years ago when we wanted to focus a little bit more on making sure that students coming into the middle school and the high school had somewhat consistent preparations. And this one basically points out that the school district board shall be responsible for establishing the district-wide curriculum or assisting member school districts to develop it jointly. So it's our responsibility with the schools to develop the curriculum. We will assist each school to follow the curriculum. And the superintendent's responsible for assisting the school district and member boards in developing, coordinating, evaluating it, and the superintendent shall conduct systematic evaluation of all programs and report the results to the school board at least annually. We've had a couple of new curriculum reports, but we haven't for a long time had a sort of comprehensive look at the various curricula that get adopted over the years, and we sometimes change them out after a few years. So we're going to try and get a little bit more a regular pattern with that. Any comments, any board comments or questions about it's a pretty straightforward policy, but just kind of articulating the board's responsibility and the superintendent's, the administrator's responsibility. Okay, we will get rid of that. I don't see any hands up. So next is public comment on non-agenda items. This is a brief period when we hear if there are non-agenda items from the public would like to have comments on. We do this again later in the meeting, typically if there are items that we didn't have motions on and the public didn't get a chance to participate on. But this is the time, if there's something that we're not talking about that you have a comment you'd like to make, this is your opportunity. And again, seeing no hands, we will move on to administrative reports. Mark, do we have retirements and resignations?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
We have 2 resignations and 1 retirement. Resignations, Hillary Katz, currently serving as a 4th grade teacher in Guilford, and Aaron Hillo, math teacher at BUHS. Will be resigning at the end of the school year. And for retirements, Herb Pelletier, who's been the principal at Putney Central School for the past 12 years, will be retiring at the end of the year.
thank you. Wendy, question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't get any information in an email earlier about the spelling on everybody's name. So can someone just make sure they send that to me pretty quickly, because I like to get these minutes out.
I see Mark nodding his head, so I think you're going to have it pretty quickly.
Excellent. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Great, thank you. Great. So could I have a motion, please, to accept the resignation of Hillary Katz, a 4th grade teacher at Guilford, Aaron Hillo, math teacher at BUHS, and the retirement of Herb Pelletier from Putney Central School as the principal. I have a motion.
So
please.
moved with regret.
Thank you, Ann.
So
Moved
moved
by-
with regret.
Moved with regret by Ann Beekman. Second.
I'll second it. Michelle?
Thank you, Michelle. Moved and seconded to accept the resignations and retirements as presented. All those in favor, please indicate by unmuting and saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, the ayes have it. Thank you. And I believe we have 4 of our building administrators who are going to tell us a little bit about the activities this week around the Black Lives Matter in the schools.
Yes, we do. We have Julianne Egan from Dummerston School, Mary Kaufman, Oak Grove School, John Gagnon, Guilford, and Kate Margitis, Green Street School. Before I turn it over to Julianne to get us started, if Michaela is here.
I'm here.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about the work of the DEI Committee?
Yeah, I just like to say it's a huge, just such a huge giant step forward that we've taken in order to have Black Lives Matter School Week in our schools. We started off 10 years ago, just really using art to celebrate our diversity and inclusion programming. We would have an art show. So the fact that we're moving forward with something such as Black Lives Matter School Week is huge and very momentous in this way, that we have definitely been making strides and steps forward. So I just want to say, really commend all the work of the teacher leaders to make this happen, and the principals and other administrators who supported this work, that that there's small steps sometimes, but we are moving forward, and that this is a big deal for us. So I don't want people to think of it as something small, even though it's not the end all be all. It very much is moving in the right direction for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela, and thank you for your leadership. Well, let's start. Julianne, you mind starting with Dummerston?
Sure. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Mark. Thanks, everybody. So I'll just provide you with just a little summary of some of the activities we did at Dummerston. A lot of these activities and just the approach was really steered by our Diversity and Equity Committee. And that is chaired by Nicole Thomas, who's our Diversity and Equity Liaison and works with Michaela. And so that committee is fourth grade teacher Molly Stoner, paraeducator Hannah Van Loan, special educator Katie Tafe, fifth and sixth grade humanities teacher Susanna Cassidy Friedman, and myself. And so Nicole, we've been talking about how to, how we would approach Black Lives Matter Week, and we agreed, we love the resources that Nicole had brought to us from the district committee. And also everyone in this group, a lot of you know the people in this group who, have a lot of really rich experience teaching these topics and approaching this work. So we decided, because there's so much material for teachers, that one of our tasks as a committee would be to kind of pare it down. And we made basically a menu for teachers, kind of a grid. I can share it with you, David, so you can share with the board at some point. But it really just took some of the pieces from the larger website that we felt like would really work well for our teachers and students at the different age levels. So that committee made that and pushed that out to staff so that teachers were able last week to do some of those activities in the classroom, and they're still working on it throughout this month and beyond. Last week we had we were cut a little short with Friday. Nicole also, she is our guidance counselor, and she also she's the advisor of what we call the asset team, which is our middle school leadership team. And so she worked with the asset team and the librarian to pick some texts and some picture books, some children's books that they would read to the lower grades. They picked out the books. They also developed discussion questions. And so they still are working on a schedule where they're going into the lower grades to do those stories and support that conversation with students. And then Nicole, she also goes in each week. She has time, tier 1 time with classes. We call it personal development, or PD. So her personal development time for grade 3 to 6 last week was around looking at what is Black Lives Matter, what are the 13 principles, what do you recognize kind of in these 13 principles that we value, that you value. They watched Hair Love and then really talked about how the principles kind of, really surfaced in that short film. So that was, one of the things she was able to do with her personal development time. So that's kind of how we approached Black Lives Matter week at Dummerston, but it's really not just that week. Of course, it goes on. We also have a teacher staff book group right now around CAST. And so that's ongoing as well, but that started probably the month before last, and we're continuing that through this month into March. So thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Mary Kaufman, Oak Grove School.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. Is it possible for me to share my screen? I have a very brief slideshow.
As soon as I push the button, you can.
Great.
I think it should work now, Mary.
Perfect. Okay.
Got it.
Everybody can see it. All right, so this will be brief, but Black Lives Matter at Schools Week here at Oak Grove School. So really it started with our student leaders a few weeks ago. They kind of led the way. They started preparing for Black Lives Matter at Schools Week, learning about what it is and what it means and how they could be leaders among the rest of the school. So they did a similar project last year where they've created signs for our bulletin boards around the school to kick off the week. So these are our sixth graders putting together some artwork to hang up around the building and really display and, prominently show our support of Black Lives Matter at Schools Week. And it will continue to stay up. As Julianne said, this work is important and it is certainly focused on a week, but continues and is always happening. So it's really nice to have the opportunity to highlight it and to get some traction and then continue moving forward. So this is some of the work that the kids put together. We had the 13 principles of Black Lives Matter week up in our upstairs hallway where our big kids are, so that they could interact, read about, interact with the bulletin board, read about the 13 principles. This bulletin board is in our lower grade hallway, and this was some artwork by one of our second graders that has been photocopied and distributed throughout the school. They were very proud of their sign. They were walking around the hallways like in a parade with it one day. They were very proud of their work. And this is one of the activities. I'll show you what our grid looks like, a diversity puzzle. So, all the pieces fit together, but each one is individual and really allowed students to see how they identified as, and then put it together as a whole puzzle piece. Our diversity equity committee at school made a menu of activities, which is here. And teachers are continuing to add to this. Even today, we had a diversity meeting and teachers were adding new books that they've read and things like that. So it's really a growing document that's available all the time, but was rolled out for Black Lives Matter week. So each morning before school, we had a Bluetooth speaker playing with some music as the kids entered the building, just for exposure to different types of music. And then we had videos and songs. And as you walked through the school building during the day, you could see kids watching videos, listening to music while they were working and having discussions about these things. At one point, I think there were even big kids watching Elmo talk about skin color as just an access point, an easy way to learn and understand. And so this was a really useful tool for many teachers. It continued down here. We had different read alouds. Oh, it's very slow, but the read alouds were, the nice thing about these is they're all available on YouTube. We also have hard copies of the books. So teachers and staff could put these on during lunch so that there was exposure to different kinds of stories, but also to read them during the school day and have conversations about them. The nice thing about books is they're easily accessible and they provide opportunities for discussion and to just interact as a whole class. And then being able to watch them on YouTube or listen to the author read them is also really an engaging experience. There was art opportunities for kids. We had one teacher create a slideshow with different images that went through like the history of civil rights movement. And so some more historic images, but also images that kids could relate to because it's something they have seen and experienced in their lifetime. And these were opportunities for discussion and talk among students and staff. Uh-oh. I have to get back to my slideshow. So those were a few examples of the activities available that teachers worked on. I would say many teachers picked an activity or two a day. So it really became a week-long work. We love scavenger hunts at Oak Grove School. It's a great way to get out in the hallways, walk around. And the nice thing about them is that they are available for even our youngest kiddos. And it meant that this artwork is hung up around the school. So here's our pre-K class walking around and identifying images that relate to Black Lives Matter throughout the school. They get to interact with members of the school community, but also identify with images and artwork, and then older kids, and even I'm sure pre-K kids are having discussions about what those images mean and what they represent. So that was a highlight. And then, of course, as I said, books are so important to this work. And this table we had on display in the front of our building, it's still there. It's been a really nice opportunity for kids and staff to see books as they walk through the hallway. It's right in a main intersection. Kids will come, pick up a book, read it, bring it back, pick up a new book. Teachers stopped by often to pick up books to read to their class. It's just a great way to display texts and books that maybe teachers and kids haven't had experience with yet. So we'll continue probably having a table like this out just for, and for other things, not just Black Lives Matter, but it was a great start for that. And finally, we know that this work is never ending. Some things that we've learned through this week is that it's really important for everybody to have accessible resources. And so one thing that we've committed to at Oak Grove School is to provide weekly spotlights in the newsletter about diversity. And how do we help parents answer questions and provide resources that will, because there are a lot of questions. Kids have questions, we all have questions. And so we're really looking for ways to offer resources so that answering those questions can become a little easier. So that's one thing we've committed to from this work. We also talked at our diversity meeting today about building on our classroom libraries. One school that I worked in a long time ago at the start of my career, every classroom got a book a month, and there were guided questions that you could have. So every kid in the whole school had the same experience, had an experience with the same book. And we thought that might be a nice way to build our classroom libraries with books around diversity and Black Lives Matter. Sorry, my dog is growling. And we also have started a student of color play group, which is it's our second week of doing that. And that's been a really great opportunity for our students to interact and engage with kids who look like them, and to socialize and play. The feedback has been phenomenal. The kids are loving it. Our big kids are taking on leadership roles to engage the younger kids, and families have been really supportive of that. So kudos to my counseling team for getting that up and running. And as I said before, there's always work to do. We're continuing that work. Open to feedback. If anybody has ideas, we'd love to share them. But I do appreciate the opportunity to share what we did at Oak Grove School.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks. Thanks, Mary. I want to, before we go on to the last two, Mark, are there any questions from the board for Mary or Julianne that came up? I wouldn't want people to forget them in the excitement of the other presentations.
Thomas, no questions, just it's fantastic. Great work. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Thomas. That's a good one. Tim?
I feel like it's show and tell, but one book that I would highly recommend is this. It's called Born on the Water. It's by Nicole Hannah Jones. It's it comes out of the 1619 Project. It is a fantastic, powerful book about one little girl's lessons from her family about where they came from Africa. So I really highly recommend this.
Thank you, Tim. Always good to talk about books. Okay, thanks.
All right, so we have John Gagnon, Guilford Elementary School.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, board, for giving us the opportunity to speak about the work that we do in our schools every day. I agree with Michaela that it is a big deal that we are acknowledging and celebrating Black Lives Matter in School Week. It's also one piece of a larger cloth, one piece of a larger mosaic. And at Guilford Central School, that's absolutely true. And so I think what I want to emphasize is the integration of BLM Week with the diversity, inclusion, the diversity work that we have been doing all year long and that we have been engaged in intentionally for many years. Our vision is to build a community, a learning community that acknowledges, celebrates, and recognizes each individual child. And so our very active Diversity and Equity Committee decided that this year we would focus on 4 of the 13 principles. And the 4 principles that we focused on this year are restorative justice, empathy, loving engagement, and diversity. And so with that more thoughtful focus, we wanted to drill down so that for each classroom, pre-K through 6, there would be activities, there would be materials, books, etc., that we could touch upon each of the day, those for 4 days, which turned out to be only a 4-day week, the 31st through the 5th. But it's part of a larger picture of work that's been going on all year and will continue after Black Lives Matter week. So some vignettes. In kindergarten, our wonderful kindergarten teacher, Miss Artiega, who is also one of our DEC leaders, on Monday of the week, the 31st, she really focused on the idea of restorative justice. And she picked a piece of literature that the name of the book is Say Something. And it really speaks about people's voice and the importance of using your voice to say or do or to support someone when you see injustice, when you see something is wrong, is to stand up and to do something. And so she put it into the context of kindergarten and had a scenario around a playtime and something happening with blocks. But she brought it to the children's level. And then from there, along with the picture book, dug into the principle of restorative justice, of the power of voice, of that individuals, we as individuals can make a difference. Another vignette would be from 3rd grade, where Miss Landers, our 3rd grade teacher, spent the week building background knowledge. This is 3rd grade, so they can delve a little deeper into some of more of the historical truths and into the terminology that surrounds Black Lives Matter, the movement. And an activity that they did, a culminating activity, was around a piece of art, similar to Oak Grove, creating a mosaic, a collective poster. The children, after engaging in defining the term social justice, with each child coming up with their answer and then sharing out, they as a group selected a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. And then from there, they divided it up into different blocks, with each child having part of the quote that they decorated in a fashion. And then they brought it together to create this rainbow poster, which is now in our main lobby. So with that is older grades being able to dig a little more into some of the terminology that we use as adults around matters of race and diversity and equity. And we want to make sure that children get appropriate and relevant instruction so it meets them at their learning levels. So those are a couple of vignettes of work that we've done this week. The work began before Black Lives Matter week. It will continue. Next week on Valentine's Day, we have selected a book that we will all be reading in each one of our classes, pre-K through 6. The book is Love by Matt DeLuna, and it really emphasizes the principles of empathy and diversity. And we will be doing some activities in each one of our classes that delve into those principles. So Black Lives Matter Week was a big deal. It is a big deal, and it's one piece of much larger work that we're doing day in and day out throughout the school district.
Thank you, John. That's great. And now we'll go to Kate Margaitis, Green Street School.
Hi, everyone. David, could I also share? I have a.
I think so. Yeah, you should be able to get it up.
All right. And just make sure.
Yep.
Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Mhm.
All right. So thank you for this opportunity. As others have said, it's actually been really great to hear what other schools have done for BLM week. And because we don't get the time to talk about that. So it's a great way to get also new ideas from others too, as well. I want to thank our TEC team led by Shannon Kelly, who I believe is here tonight, and Tracy Benet Perrin, and Stephanie Spring, one of our ASTs, Molly Sylvain, one of our 5th grade teachers, Mira Coffey, kindergarten paraeducator, and Meg Chingari, a 2nd grade teacher, are all part of that team. So one of the things that they put together for every staff member was this document that listed out the social justice standards and the questions about those standards, along with grade appropriate videos, read alouds, and books, along with some activities. So they had all of these resources to choose from throughout the week. So kindergarten read Beautiful Blackbird, and I'll just choose one from each slide. There are many. I didn't even list everything that was done. But Beautiful Blackbird was a story that they read and discussed how the color black is beautiful. And they decorated colored birds with black, like the blackbird did in the story. And they also read Hair Love, and they drew themselves with their favorite hairstyles. In the 1st grade, they revisited the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and spoke about ways to change the world and did an activity along with that. This picture is from when they read I'm Not Just a Scribble. And I'm Not Just a Scribble, who's the main character, never thought he was different until he met his first drawing. And then after being left out because he didn't look like everyone else, Scribble teaches the drawings how to accept each other for who they are, which is a great thing for 1st grade. And pictured here, this is Miss Johnson's 1st grade class, and our academic coach, Bryn Tucker, and she had brought down for gifts for them, if you can see in the picture, the colored hair pieces that they all wore, and they're very proud displaying their work. In 2nd grade, they read many books and they learned about Martin Luther King Jr. and thought about ways that they would like to see the world change. And then they studied their own identity and cultures and wrote acrostic poems using their names and drawing self-portraits. In 3rd grade, they used, we have morning meeting every day, which is a great way to build community and have discussions around topics and things going on in the world. And this was from Jen Germain, asked the question in her morning meeting, what does Black Lives Matter mean to you? And she said they had a great discussion about the injustices in our world and having the ability to make positive change. And so that sounded like a really great discussion. And again, throughout the week, some students chose to create posters and hang them in their classroom, and pictured is one of those. In the 4th grade, both classes are working with the Hill We Climb. One group is doing a class video, and they also read about the principles of Black Lives Matter. They listened to the poem, The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, and students looked for lines in the poem that spoke to them or provided some story imagery. And then they took those lines and made a poster in celebration of the poem and its powerful messages. And so that's what you're seeing pictured here. Pretty amazing work. In 5th grade, this is actually a bulletin board in one of the classrooms that's been up for quite some time now. They do a lot of work in their literacy time around young change makers. So they're learning about activism. And one that they're studying is Marley. Marley Diaz is one, and she started the hashtag 1000 Black Girl Books campaign. So collecting with the goal of collecting more books with Black girls as main characters to distribute to schools. And so they did also talk about how main characters of color, how few there are, and discuss the impact of that imbalance. And in 6th grade, this is Shannon's class and some students from her class. They made some tie-dyed t-shirts, and that picture of them wearing them is from today, actually. So that was great. We could submit that photo of them actually wearing them. They chose to wear them to school. They studied the 13 principles of Black Lives Matter. And each day at the beginning of the day, some students came down each day, different students, and either read poems or quotes by people that they chose over the loudspeaker for everybody to hear, which was pretty powerful each morning. And our classroom libraries have been given an enormous amount of books. Each class has a lot of new books for their libraries to around this work. And every classroom now has the 13 Principles book as well. And so we look to continue this work as we always have, but I think this was a great start to do as a whole community.
Thank you, Kate and John and Julianne and Mary for volunteering to share some of the work that went on last week in your schools and continue to go on. And thank you to the board for giving us a platform to share work that's going on in our schools right now.
Great. Thank you. Any other board questions or comments? Tim, and then Sean.
Just Julianne, Mary, John, Deb, those were fantastic presentations. I can't thank you enough. It's very exciting to see what's happening in our lower grades. John, you once told me that one of the missions at Guilford is to produce budding environmentalists. It sounds like everybody is producing budding social champions of social justice too. So I really commend you for all the great work. The question I have is, was it celebrated at Bamson High School? What's happening there?
Yes, it was. And we can do some share outs at future meetings, Tim. I didn't want to plug all schools into one night. I think that would have taken quite a long time.
Thanks. Sean, and then Jackie.
Thank you. I would like to echo what Tim said in terms of the involvement of all the principals in the schools that spoke. And it's really incredible. I just wrote down a continuation of change. And in light of some of the recent things that have happened in some of our schools, I think this really validates the work that has been done and is being done and will continue to be worked on. And it's moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jackie?
Thanks, David. Two quick things I wanted to mention. Thank you to Michaela. I know that you are the driving force behind a lot of this, and it sounds like such great work. And also, I appreciate you pointing out how far we've come in the last 10 years, because having been only on the board for 2 years, and my kids just felt kind of little, couldn't say what we might have done a few years ago. But hearing that we're doing this, it's really exciting to think about what we might do in the future. So this is exciting for me. And I also wanted to just say to all of the teachers and administrators that are here, that I'm sure I'm not the only parent to feel this way. Many of us feel this way. The work is showing itself when our kids come home so excited about what they learned. And also my nephews, I have one at BAM, so I know they've done some really great work. It's just been a really fun week hearing hearing about all of just the different things that they're learning that they're excited about that, you know, we didn't learn about or I didn't when I was in school. So great work. And I just, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jackie. Any other? I don't see any more hands or a couple more people coming in coming from the waiting room. So I think we will move on to the fiscal report, the annual report development. Frank, do we have more developing to do, or is this a report of what we're going to be presenting on the third week of February?
So this is more of just a quick status report that we do have the annual report up on the website. We just spent about an hour with the finance committee before this evening reviewing the various resources and documents that are in the various places on the website. The independent budget review committee has also been working on their report, and it will be added to the website. And it will also be integrated, I think, as a fold in to the hard copy in your report that's being distributed. I don't know if Sean, you wanted to make any other comments, or any of the other finance committee members about, Michelle had some good suggestions on how to make sure we keep getting the word out to our communities in terms of what's behind the proposed budget.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, we did a review of what's going to happen in the public information meeting on the 24th. And it's really interesting, as has been said. It's a very interesting budget year. And I think that we can illuminate at that time, how it actually ended up favorably as far as property owners go, which is fantastic. So there are a lot of different reasons why that all came together. And it's just, it's a pretty good outlook, really. So, let's all make sure that we talk it up and get everybody to come out and vote on March 1st, and the importance of passing this very responsible budget. In addition to that, I do have, if this would be, let me just ask Frank if I could, whether this would be a good time to make a motion for some ASHRAE things that have to be done within the district.
Yeah, if we could, as part of the budget plan, the fiscal year 23 plan, we also have the capital plan on the website. It's been part of what we've discussed. To move forward with implementing the projects, the Agency of Ed needs a board motion, a document that I can submit that essentially acknowledges that we are moving forward with the projects that are in our capital plan. So I do have a specific list of those. If we, it'll be a one sentence kind of motion. If we could cover that now, it would allow us to move forward.
Frank, we haven't the WSESD board has not reviewed the capital plan at all. If we haven't looked at it individually, we have no idea what's in. So I would suggest we put that on the March 1st agenda and have a presentation on the capital plan, even though it's after the vote, so that we know what we're voting on or what we're approving. I thought that was a pretty big gap in the presentation, but we were hurrying to get it on by March 1st. But I think it would be out of order to accept a motion on something that we haven't looked at.
Doesn't make any sense to me in that we have had it in front of the board and the finance committee since October. But that if you want to take that tact, it will delay the implementation, it'll delay the application process, and that's your choice.
Yeah, well, the application and the budget will all be done on March 1st. But yeah, I just want to point out that this board did not see budget documents until the first week in January. So the committee's working on it, but that was not communicated to us.
No, that's not true. I did submit those to the full board. And we did have that scheduled for the December 21st meeting, but you changed the topic on the agenda to the SU board review instead of the
Right. Because we hadn't,
but,
yeah,
but we
because we
did
hadn't
have
heard
that
that
in
yet
front of the
either.
board. We did have the documents in front of the board on December 21st.
Okay, so we'll take it up on March 1st. Michelle?
A few things. I just first of all, I just wanted to clarify because I'm also a little bit confused about not moving forward. Just because the motion would just be that we've already approved this budget to go to the voters, and I would just be approving, acknowledging that we're using federal funds for those capital plans, so that he could submit the right paperwork. It's really just we've already approved the budget, so I'm not sure that it's anything the board needs to review. It's because we've already approved that. So I think we should be reconsidering that. I don't want to delay major plans. But I had my hand raised because I just wanted to raise the point that early voting will be underway soon. Requests for ballots for absentee ballots had to be in by today, and they're going to be being sent out. And since our public information meeting isn't until I think it's February 24th, there's a little disconnect with information for the public. And so there is on the WSESU homepage a link right at the very top that says WSESD budget vote, and it has our annual report. It will, as of Thursday, have, I think I would anticipate a very concise report from the Independent Budget Review Committee that might be a little bit more reader friendly than the annual report for someone who is just wanting to look and understand before they early vote or absentee vote and might not have opportunity. I just want to make sure people have the information and know where to find it. And the Communication Council will do whatever we can to promote that on social media and whatnot as well, so that people know where to find the information ahead of time.
Sean?
Yeah, if I could go back to the what Frank spoke about a little bit, it has to do with ASHRAE standards, and it has to do with implementation of federal funds to continue doing projects that have already started that Frank's been working on very hard. And they're at BAMS, at BUHS, Academy, Guilford, and Dummerston. And they all have the need to be on the minutes in order to move forward, in order to complete the projects that have been started, and with the use of federal funds because of the CARES Act and the ESSER funds. So I would be very disappointed if we put this off until March 1st. So it's something that Frank has been working on diligently and addressing specific needs in specific schools to bring them up to ASHRAE standards. And as I said, like in Guilford, they've already done a tremendous number. And to put a pause on it now would be it would be a waste. So I would really hope that this motion could be made, and I hope it would be supported by the board.
Liz?
I have a middle of the road suggestion here. If we have a quorum of people who have actually looked at that, then we could vote on it and still pass it, if that makes sense. I know that I've looked at all of it and it's fine with me. I don't know how many other people on the board have done so, but that's one way we could make everybody happy.
Well, Liz, typically, if we're going to take an action, the agenda item will say action requested or action expected or something like that. And we would see the language and we would have it in front of us. And I've been trying all year to discourage last minute surprises. And I'm not going to break with that pattern. We really have to stop doing things last minute. So again, it's out of order to take this up without warning it. So we'll take it up on the 1st.
I'll just add that all 4 of the projects are to improve the safety and health of our schools and the air quality that our children and teachers experience day in and day out.
Yeah, and it's definitely not last minute. It's been on the discussion template since last July. These, as Sean mentioned, these are extensions of existing projects that were approved by the board during the pandemic. And you may recall the indoor air quality grants only provided enough funds for about half of some of these projects. So these are things that have been in the works for a year or more, and they are definitely not last minute. There is no surprise here.
I'm going to hear from Jackie, and then we're going to move on.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I wanted to voice my support for making this motion tonight, because I also feel that we've heard a lot about this. There's nothing new. We've approved these projects and the support is needed. And yes, it's unfortunate if it feels like it's last minute because it wasn't properly warned. That has happened many times this year. And I guess I would ask for it to happen again now so that we can move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, move on to the committee reports. The Social Justice Committee, based on some things that happened over the last couple of weeks in the media, the Social Justice Committee felt it necessary to take up some of these questions. And I want to ask the committee members to share. I have the minutes from the meeting, which we can put up if we wish to, but I want to ask the committee members to talk about first I think start with the social justice curriculum and then talk about the recruitment of diverse candidates. And it's 7 o'clock, so we have nearly an hour for this. So we do need an executive session, but we have quite a bit of time for this. So Thomas, Liz, or Tim, would you like to open this conversation?
I think sharing the minutes up on the screen might be the easiest thing than having me read them off, but
okay.
I can talk. I think we can all have a little bit to add about some of the ideas that we had at the meeting. And I think Michaela might be a little bit better. Is Michaela here? Yeah, to talk about the curriculum ideas, if that's okay. But
so
basically,
these are the, this is the establishing district-wide curriculum around social justice.
Well, I was going to refer to the ideas we had about recruiting. That's what I was planning on talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to share that part.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't have it on my screen. Can you share it? That's what I meant.
I think that's what I had. Let me just.
You had the curriculum one. There was the part of the minutes for the agenda item strategies for making partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities. That
okay, gotcha. Okay. That is.
Or is it at the top? There it is. There it is. Good. Yeah. So probably the biggest focus of the committee since, at least since I've been on the board, has been trying to diversify our workforce. What can we do? We haven't had great success so far. So we were trying to brainstorm in the session about what specific tangible things can we do to bring us some sort of progress. And here's some items, some ideas. I'll read it on my screen, it's a little easier. So we had an idea of that we already budgeted for was, do I have it down the bottom? Sorry, I'm looking for it on here. Okay, I don't see it, but there was a district-wide job fair idea that we had budgeted for that we had been talking about, where we do our own job fair for trying to recruit people. The idea was that basically doing more of the same thing, doing more of the same hiring processes is probably going to have the same results that we've had for a few years. And to try to look for people in different areas through different means, to go out to universities and talk to their education departments and their job placement departments and try to talk to them directly. I don't know. Well, are there any specific parts that anybody else who was there thought were particularly pertinent, aside from just reading these off?
Yeah, should I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Okay, I'll try to make this brief, but I can't. First, I'd like to thank all those who signed and submitted the letter in today's Brattleboro Reformer entitled "In Solidarity with Students Targeted by Racial Harassment." The letter acknowledges the good work of many parents, community members, and school faculty and staff. And we heard tonight the great work that many of our principals and staff are doing. So they've been doing good work working for justice, but the letter also points out that recent incidents of racial harassment and bullying are not isolated events, but, quote, longstanding systemic issues of white supremacy culture prevalent in our society and in our schools. As a member of this school board that has established social justice and anti-racism as ongoing goals, I encourage those who sign this letter and others to continue to hold the school board accountable for working with our schools and the district administration for sustained change and justice. And again, that's the message we heard from the elementary school principals: sustained change for all students in our district. I believe we've made over the years very little progress in diversifying the workforce. So we need to take a different, bolder path, one with a sustained and high priority commitment to diversifying the workforce at all levels, including this board, and also to hearing directly from student representatives of marginalized groups. And I hope that when this board reconvenes its new committee in March, that there'll be some different kind of student representation, particularly from marginalized groups. 3, I hope that we continue to ensure that the district develops a school-wide curriculum at all levels around social justice and anti-racism, and that we establish PBIS as a broad umbrella to and common language to give our students emotional consistency. And I hope that restorative justice is the go-to approach for resolving conflicts rather than primarily working on punitive measures. That was, I think, that's my response to the letter and my hope that came out of the very fruitful Social Justice Committee member meeting that we had.
I think, Tim, since I got a little confused about what we were talking about recruiting and then about the social justice curriculum. So I'd like to shift back to the social justice curriculum and ask Keith if he would tell us a little bit about what the, I know that he and his staff and Michaela have been working diligently for the last couple of weeks to respond to these issues. So I maybe ask Keith if he would talk a little bit about what they've been doing at the middle school.
Can I say something first, Keith?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to highlight that this is not in response to any issue, that this is ongoing work, and that's an important point to make, that I began talking with Keith about these, using these standards last year at the end of the school year, was our first conversation. So just know that sometimes things happen and act as a catalyst to bring things more quickly into fruition, but to know that there is an ongoing march in this district. It's not fast enough and it's not enough, and it takes all of us to do it. But I just wanted to keep that in mind, that this is not a response, but ongoing work.
Thank you.
I also wanted to make a quick statement. Just the idea behind, I think I can speak for everyone in the committee. We feel, I think generally, that there is great commitment to this intellectually, great commitment to diversifying the workforce, that we pretty much all want it. But there's this real inertia, and there's just this blockage that we can't accept. That's all. We really, I think, feel that there is a great sentiment behind what we're trying to do, and that it's widely agreed upon, but that there is something holding us back, so that we have to break out of the box, and that's about it.
Great, Thanks, Thomas. Okay. Go ahead, Keith.
Let me find my screen again here. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to make a much more condensed version of a presentation I made to our Leadership Council last week. We had a nice turnout. It started with a presentation by our social worker, Doreen Burke, and Christy Henderson, our instructional coach, at 5:30 with parents on social emotional learning and school culture, and then we shifted to our Leadership Council. And I really enjoyed the conversation. Before I get into this, I just wanted to shift gears for one moment, because I'm not sure if we'll get to it later. I just want to acknowledge we had a student pass away this week, a 7th grade boy who's been battling cancer. It's our second 7th grader to pass away this school year. And so it's been a little rough this week. It's very rough this week with the students and the staff who worked with Orion Crockwell. He was 13 years old, and we did a moment of silence this afternoon with our staff, and it's been a little rough. So I hope that everyone keeps his family and classmates and the community in your thoughts. All right, so I'll shift gear. I wanted to make sure people are aware of that tragic event, unfortunately. So we've really been dedicated, as Michaela said, we've been doing pretty intensive work for 3 years with our professional development. One of the first really active times that I remember really getting into it was at the end of the 2019 school year. We watched this video educators are probably familiar with called I Am From Here. And it was a pretty powerful video of Vermont students of color who were experiencing a lot of racism, microaggressions, things like that. And they told their stories. And then the company that kind of produced the video also produced a bunch of talking points for staff. And we went through and completed a lot of reflection, and that was kind of in June of 2019. It set the stage for the last 3 years and a lot of our work. And I wanted to show you a little, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but in the last 3 years, I put together staff meeting agendas. I pulled out all kinds of other meetings that we have. I just wanted to show, I think there's well over 20 staff meetings that throughout the pandemic, we've continued to focus on this work. So this is, September 5th of 2019, right off the bat, we started working on harassment, bullying, social justice. You'll see other things in here, grading and proficiencies, etc. But then that year was Michaela's last year serving the middle high school. Specifically, the following year, she went to the central office in a broader position. But Judy Dow and Michaela came and did a lot of work with us the 1920 school year. We started with racism, marginalization. We also did work with Joelle Van Lent on trauma-informed education, homelessness. We did more trauma follow-up. And then you can see in these agendas, I can't see the dates. Don't worry too much about the dates, but Judy and Michaela came and did more work. We did work on gender, issues of gender. Michaela came and did a faculty meeting on January 30th of 2020. We mixed in, if you see way on the right here, gender ID with Scott Kaltenbaugh. Michaela continued to work on race with our staff. Jessica Earp, one of our teachers, did a couple of trainings on trauma. We went into the following year was the first fall, as you recall, going into the COVID year. So our first few faculty meetings were all COVID related, but we put COVID aside, and we purposely put it aside the spring of 20 when we were dealing with all this. We did work on race and issues of social justice, and then we kind of picked it up again by November. We had a meeting on courageous conversations, implicit bias training, Our diversity, so this was the year that Michaela went to the central office and we created this system of diversity equity committees. And so our committee started planning our staff meetings, and it was terrific. And we came up with this book called Empowering Teachers, the Empowering Teachers Workbook. It's 52 pages long. And so a lot of our agenda items focused on this Empowering Teachers Workbook. We did some work on microaggressions. We had to mix in other things. We worked with High Five, a awesome company we've worked with. And then towards the end, we did Empowering Teachers Part 4, 5, and 6. This year, these meetings don't go in order. I couldn't sort this spreadsheet properly, but you can see some of the things that we are planning or have done. DD is developmental designs. We've done some work planning for the refugees. We can't, like this morning, we had a staff meeting. I canceled it. It was department meetings, and I changed it to diversity equity work. We changed our agenda because we wanted to kind of focus. So we've had 3 consecutive faculty meetings, all dedicated to diversity equity work. And you see moving ahead on the 15th, we'll continue building off the work we did this morning. And so we have more training, more work coming up as we move along this year. So, so that's a broader scope. I think there's well over 20 meetings in the last 3 years. I'll share a couple other things, just getting a little deeper into some of these meeting agendas. Our Diversity Equity Committee created agendas for all of our meetings, and there were some wonderful resources they shared with us. This is hours and hours of professional development work. I'll just start with some of the first ones. We did focus on implicit bias. I won't pull up that article, but an Edutopia article is really great on implicit bias. Courageous conversations about race. These 2 items right here, 4 agreements of courageous conversations. That's, you know, at the middle level, it's a big change for us to really dig deep into to some of these topics, and our staff are taking it head on. I won't go through all of this, but the microaggressions, the courageous conversations, really great things that we've been working on for a long time. What I want to, I'll share a couple other things. When the pandemic was starting, we spent some time taking a look at our curriculums. And I got to shrink the screen down slightly. I highlighted a couple of them. So I basically just asked staff members to take this document and start filling in all the things that you do on an individual or department level in your classes. And the ones in bold I thought were really good examples. Daisy Frederick and her tech and design classes and skills block. And a lot of them will say, you know, been talking with Michaela about these things. So Daisy was working, showcasing underrepresented people in the field of tech engineering, including women, people of color, youth, physical differences, etc. The science department, including scientists with diversity of gender, race, and nationality in videos, other media roles. So they're doing a lot of curriculum review. We provide lessons. I think this is counseling. So counseling goes around and talks about issues of race, issue of diversity, harassment. And they do that every year. They go around classroom to classroom. A couple other quick ones. We do some diversity day work. Social studies curriculum. There's a lot of work happening in social studies around a lot of different things that 8th grade social studies is doing work on redlining right now. They're reading Jefferson's Sons, having some wonderful conversations. So this is just an example of some of the curriculum work being done. A health class, Nancy Hugh does a lot of work, sexism, racism, privilege, LGBTQ plus, topics like that. So I didn't highlight everything, and I'm pretty sure there's more than that. We got to take a look at updating some of that more. But despite all of this, the thing that I recognize, and I want to make sure everyone knows we recognize, is that despite all of this work, we still have racism. We still have issues of harassment. We still have students who leave school or come to school very feeling upset about the situation that they've been put in based on racism. We recognize that this work isn't enough. We have more work to do. And so we're really committed to that work. And, that's right, because we could never say, well, we're doing all this professional development, so everything's fine. It isn't fine. And we know that we want to keep working hard, but we have a staff who's incredibly dedicated to this work. We love our kids. We love them unconditionally. We do everything we can to work with students who have experienced bad things. And, we'll continue to do so. And we're really, as Michaela said, that this is not something we're just jumping into, but we know we need to do more. So if you want to look at, there's a little Padlet thing from our art teacher up on the school's website. You could take a look at it. It's how she's incorporating people of color into the art curriculum. It's really great. So I just want to touch on briefly our plan moving ahead, because I don't want to talk too much. I created, in working with Michaela, we created this, I got to get it opened up here for you, sorry. Created this plan, and it's 2 pages, so it's not, this is an overview. It's not all the details, but the opening paragraph there, you can read it. We recognize there's a lot of work to do.
It's not up. We're not seeing it, Keith.
I'm sorry. Well, I see it good.
Can you share your screen again?
Yeah. All right, so they'll see it now. Yeah. I mean, you can. I'll just briefly explain the overview. You can read any of that you'd like. I look at the topic of social justice into a couple of large buckets. We have prevention, and there's a couple layers of prevention in my mind, and then our response when something does happen. The prevention to me is broken into 2 big buckets. The basic prevention education, like here's our handbook, you can't do these things. If you do it, there'll be consequences. It's not okay. Those like basic school expectations. Those start obviously at home, but our responsibility at school is to talk to kids about what the rules are, what harassment is and what it means, what bullying is. And then there's a level of prevention, obviously much deeper than telling kids they can't do certain things. It's much, much different, deeper. And it's the kind of things I was just showing you on my screen around curriculum and how we're embedding our work into all of our content. That is a tremendous amount of work. What we're trying to talk about as a staff is we can't stop teaching whatever subject and say, now we're going to do a lesson in this. Now, of course, you can do that. But the goal, and Michaela and I have been talking about this, is around making this part of your everyday work. That when you're teaching social studies or science or math or physical education, that we're embedding lessons of diversity, equity in everything we're doing. But our initial plan is to kind of tackle some things head on with direct instruction. And so I talked about prevention briefly. Response is a critical area as well around, okay, so something is witnessed. How do students respond to what was witnessed? And One thing we talked a lot about recently, we need to do more training on is active bystander work. I think things happen with middle schoolers and with younger and older kids where they witness something and they're too nervous to report it. For whatever reason, there's usually a lot of social implications. But active bystander training, but the response. So let's just say it gets reported to a teacher, that gets to us. And as administrators, Mr. Dotton and I, the details of what we do to respond to that complaint. So those are the two big buckets that I talk about in this plan. The first thing that we've chosen to work with is something called Learning for Justice. It used to be Teaching Tolerance. This is where we're going to pull our primary curriculum from. It's a free resource. I've created my own account. It's incredibly deep, and essentially what they have here is a ton of lesson plans based on whatever subject, whatever grade level, etc. you can pull from. And teachers are really good at taking a sample lesson plan and then modifying it for our kids, our school, our needs. So most of the things I'll share with you this evening are built off this Learning for Justice website. There are these standards for Learning for Justice, and I'll just pull those up. There are 20 standards. So as a staff, and we started looking at these today, it's broken into 4 areas. Each of the 4 areas has 5 standards. So the first one is called identity. And so there's these 5 standards around identity. And if you clicked here, you would get much more detail around identity. We do a lot of work at AMS around identity, a tremendous amount of work because it's highly connected to our developmental designs curriculum. Then we go into diversity standards. So there's 5 more there. And what I'll say is that in the 7th grade next year, we'll be focused on identity and diversity. And with the 8th grade, we'll be focused on justice and action. So today, what we did in our staff meeting was say, okay, for 8th graders, we want you to take between justice and action. We want you to pick the top 3 standards that you think are going to impact our students the most, that we think we can get our most bang for our buck by starting with these next year. So we've collected data on so the staff had a chance to take a look at those this morning, talk about them as departments, and then I surveyed them, and our DEC is going to take that data and start to plan further professional development. So I was really proud of that work this morning. So those are the standards we're picking from. There's 20 of them. In the first quarter of the school, so the initial plan is that, and it's a draft plan, quarter 1, we're going to be focused on teaching identity. Quarter 2 around teaching diversity, quarter 3 on teaching justice, and quarter 4 teaching action. Now I'm obviously going to have to revise that plan because we did split. Instead of trying to give all the teachers all the standards, we broke it up by grade. So we're going to pick some sample lessons from the Learning for Justice website, because if you pull up, if you picked identity and looked at all the lesson plans for middle school on identity in that resource, there are hundreds of them. So we're going to pick out ones that we think would be most impactful and go from there. Moving on, I've just listed some things we're currently doing. This current standards thing that we're talking about. Curriculums that the counselors I highlighted in the previous slide. Student leadership takes our school climate data and creates plans. We have diversity day. We have this AWARE group, which is a group for students of color that Michaela runs. We have our flags. We did do extensive work with Black Lives Matter this week. It was a wonderful start to something that I'm really looking forward to as a tradition. We have GSA clubs. We collaborate with Michaela. You can read all these things. I won't read every little thing. This is a piece on our response. So teaching kids around, or prevention around policies, handbooks. We have assemblies with kids. I've had 3 assemblies this year with kids talking about harassment, just to reemphasize our expectations. And then there's the kind of response when a violation has occurred. And Tim talked about restorative practices. So, we work with Mike Zostack when Tom and I find situations we think would be appropriate for restorative justice. So I just fired off a lot of information, but I wanted to keep it relatively brief. I'm at about 20 minutes, so I'll stop talking. Before, I guess I just, two other quick things, I'm sorry. I wanted to give a chance for Michaela. I wanted to give a chance for Michaela to speak. And I just wanted to summarize that I wrap up this presentation emphasizing how hard the BAM staff works to make the school a positive and supportive as possible for all of our kids. We're focused on improving outcomes for marginalized students. We recognize that despite all the work we've done, we continue to have work to do. We are highly trained professionals and we take this responsibility extremely seriously. We're never complacent and we're always striving to get better every single day. Thank you. Michaela wanted to follow up, I believe, in what I shared.
Thanks, Keith.
Oh, I did. I guess.
Sorry if I crossed you up, Michaela.
I'm like, oh.
Don't have to.
No, I mean, my only thought, I think that what you said was thorough. My only addition would be to say that this isn't unique to BAMS, is that our hope is to use the social justice standards to have outcomes for every grade level. And so that these things will be kind of learn in a spiral fashion, that the kids will keep coming back to the same thing. And that is it's really important and imperative that these things happen all the time. So it's not just an advisory, it's not just in the classroom, it's all connected. That's why how the developmental designs and the PBIS that also build in teacher relationships is really important, because how we talk to students, how we interact with students is also the backbone of this work. How we're able to see them. That being said, we know that we live in an inequitable society and that we're fighting an uphill battle, that our schools are not bubbles. And so we have to, as we do this work, we have to build more and more courage in ourselves and in each other and really have each other's back. And so it's really important, and I don't know, hopefully, I don't know if it's okay to say this, but incumbent on the board to say that as teachers are taking these risks, as they're doing things that are new to them, that they have the support of not just their administrators in the building, not just the superintendent, but also the board, and doing things that are new, that might be a little bit scary, and that is really essential for people to be able to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Emily, I saw you had your hand up and now it's gone. Liz?
It's not so much a question as a remark. I was at the BAMS Leadership Council meeting too, and I appreciate the letter from our communities that was in the Reformer. And I think as a board, I know I speak for myself, and addressing what Michaela said, there is a lot of work to do, and we know that, and it's continuing, and we support that. But another chunk of this is this stuff starts when kids are little, and Keith is getting, besides COVID, the emotional fallout from COVID, all the schools that feed into BAMS and all the kids that come there are coming from other schools. So that it's like, I almost feel like the middle school got singled out and slammed. But we have to recognize that all of our schools are working on this, and it's going to take time for this to start filtering up to the higher grade levels as they move through the schools. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that, as a former preschool teacher, it was really difficult finding sources, and I finally did find a source. But how do you teach a preschool class that's full of white kids? How do you teach them? And I did find a good source, and I was able to use it. But it's what Keith is seeing is it's there. we know it's there and everybody's working hard on it. I wish it could happen overnight, but it can't. But definitely have my support for all the hard work you're doing and all the teachers are doing and all the administrators are doing. Thanks.
Thanks, Liz. Emily and then Tim.
Hello. So I have a few notes I wrote down. So usually I'm pretty even-handed and I give a lot of compliments to in general. I guess when I hear about all this work going on, the constant mantra that resonates in my head is we're all working hard, but are we working smart? And I've heard over and over again tonight, oh, all the teachers are working hard, all the staff are working hard. Liz just said, everybody's working so hard and we have to catch up. I understand everybody's always working hard. There's no doubt in my head that every single educator is there for the students and they want to do what's best and that the administrators are working hard. All this good stuff's going on, right? But the smart piece is what I question. So we're already on a curriculum and maybe people will, balk and tell me differently, but I guess I wonder what's the assessment? We assess everything, maybe assessment to death. And do we know where we are at in our own implicit biases? Do we have an assessment for that? Are there assessments for that? Where do we want to go? We have a lot of ideas. We know there's a lot of issues and we know there has to be reprimands over here and there has to be training over here, but I'm not really hearing directly what would equal success. And I'm not saying, we can have a long-term vision that's much broader, but I guess I see it as I had a friend actually who was working in a charter school in New York. And what they would do is he was a white educator. 90% of the students were Black and they had implicit bias training after school and people were crying. I mean, the staff was not necessarily happy about the training, but the fact was people were being called out for things that they weren't doing that, necessarily promoted anti-racism. And that process of change was hard. And Thomas said before, he was what did Thomas say? I wrote it down up here. Thomas said, oh, there's a lot of good intentions. And I definitely think that's the case. Even in my own business, I have good intentions. I'm not necessarily doing stuff that's great. I'm probably doing a lot of things that are biased, right? That are I think I'm making progress, but I haven't analyzed myself. So I guess what I wrote down a bunch of things was do we need more PD or do we need personal development? What are we asking of our staff? And what direction do we want to go in? Are we asking them to personally really look at their own biases and then measure kind of change? Is that our responsibility? Or are we providing more training so that they can kind of, I don't want to say, I don't know what the other word for it, in order to create a classroom that's really anti-biased, you have to have an approach. You have to be more anti-bias, right? You have to embody that. Then it would be natural. We're just asking them to do a training that they half-heartedly agree with because they haven't analyzed themselves. I'm just not sure how functional that's going to be for our system. And what I wrote down is where's the assessment? Where's the approach going? What are our measures and how are we going to get there? And then all these curriculums are great. I think they're a great next step, but I don't know, the things that you mentioned, people need to talk correctly, they need to interact correctly, need to evolve the system. All those things don't strike me as you can just give a training and somebody's now we're reading this book. I think reading the books is great, but it just strikes me as it's not enough. And I think we all know that. We don't know how to get there. We all have good intentions, but I just want us to work a little smarter here. I don't know the approach either. I'm not saying I'm so smart and I know what to do, but where are we at? And I guess I asked that. I don't know who from the administration can necessarily say an answer to that or say maybe something that could say, where are we at concretely? And if we don't know, that's fine. I don't know. So, it's fine for us to admit that we don't know.
Emily, I'll ask people to respond to that as we go through the hands up and stuff. One thing I wanted to point out is that over the last few years, we have put together a really really pretty strong infrastructure in terms of diversity equity committees in every school, and they're active. They're really committed. I think we heard about that when the elementary schools presented the work they did last week. And we also have teacher leaders that are really dedicated and really becoming more and more knowledgeable in the area. And we've got Michaela, and she's got a support person coming on. And if we need be, we can expand that. I think the issues are going to come up around time and priorities and how to have those really difficult conversations. But we've got a really good in-building infrastructure of people that already have relationships and already are moving in this direction, which I think is going to, it will, the work that's been done in the last few years, I think is going to help us a lot in this next period. Tim?
I lowered my hand because I don't want to divert the conversation. So
Okay.
I'll be back.
I think Mark was going to say something, and Mark, I might want to say something after you. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. I think it's got to be a holistic approach. Professional development, but also a commitment to having serious, reflective conversations with each other in our buildings. And to do that, we need to set norms and expectations of each other before we have those conversations. And I think Michaela and I have talked about this. That's really important to establish a culture in your school and in our school district that we're committed to having these conversations and being open and honest with each other. But you can't just say that and then do it. I think we need to establish like norms of expectations and hold each other to those. Go ahead, Michaela.
I just want to say, like, none of this is missed on me. I'm a Black woman. At this time, I think I'm the only Black woman that works in the district and have been for quite a long time. There have been sometimes, different times more people of color and less. And so I don't miss this point. And I think that what people realize also is that
we lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Faded out there.
It takes us all to be part of this. And so I'm glad we have a good turnout at this meeting. I think that we need to continue to have good turnouts and people on the daily involved in this process. And the reality is, in terms of curriculum, as a teacher educator, which is what I do, I'm a social justice teacher educator, creating the curriculum isn't just for the kids. It changes us. It changes our relationships. So that's one thing that gets missed. It's not something that's pushed out. It's something that also transforms us. You can do the training. I've seen all the people. I've seen the most racist people sit and cry, and they'll feel all their feelings. And then the next day, they go back and do the same thing they did before because they did what they were supposed to do. And that's cry and feel bad about racism and then go about their business. So to me, the measuring stick, the yardstick isn't just in the classroom. You're right, it's in our daily lives. It's like, do you say something when something goes wrong in the co-op? Do you see it when other people are being ignored? Do you see when your child is not treating someone fairly and interrupt that? There's all these different levels. And so of course, like the measuring stick is in all parts of our lives. We can't mandate change on people. And I think the best thing that Paul Gorski ever said is, he said, we spend so much time doing equity work, and I stopped doing this, to be honest, worrying about the people who are going to get mad about it. Kind of like what I feel like this is kind of similar to what you were saying and Thomas was saying, like that the people who are going to be upset and that don't want to participate, and we plan it for them. And we look at that and we're wondering, we don't want to step on people's toes. And the reality is that we have to build up the people who are interested in doing it, create an environment for those people to grow and flourish. And that's what we're trying to do right now. And so I don't think that it's a one-off. I think that this is important. And there are times when this work gets marginalized and it gets pushed to the side because other people have other irons on the fire and no one cares and no one tells me to come to the board meeting and no one talks to me and I don't get any emails. So if people really want to do something, it's to stay steady because it's a marathon. And I've been at it and I continue to experience racism in my work. And it's not a small thing. It's a big thing. It's a big thing for me to show up to work every day. This is not small. And I don't want people to think that it's taken lightly at all, but that we're here for the kids. I mean, that's why I show up, is because I love the kids and this is what we want to do. And it's true. There are people with a stiff learning curve, and there's others that it comes naturally to. And our job is to try to bring as many people into the fold as we can to make it happen. And it ain't going to be pretty necessarily, but I think that there are a lot of people dedicated to making it happen. Thank you.
Well said. And I think creating a culture of holding each other accountable, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at around norming processes as well, to have honest conversations. Thanks, Michaela.
Emily?
So I appreciate that, Mark, and I mean, other people's comments too. And Michaela, one thing I really love that you said is that the curriculum really first it changes the teachers and then it changes the students. And I love that. And I guess I wonder, what do you see as and I also like this kind of rising tide, like, don't worry about the people who aren't going to come on board, you know, or the ones that are really far hard to reach, get the rising tide going and the tide will just sweep everybody, you know, or sweep the system. I guess I wonder, like, when you say like the curriculum will just, you know, will start to evolve the teachers, like, how do you assess that? Because I mean, with the curriculum as changing the kids, there's a direct way to assess that. But when we're kind of working with teachers, it's like, we don't want it to, and I don't think this is not your intention at all, and you already said this, it's not so everybody feels good or like everybody's crying in the meetings, because like then the next day they could be, you know, doing awful things, not with bad intention, but just they didn't change really. So I guess I wonder, how do you assess that change?
I think that, you know, as in so many social sciences, is that social sciences are often called social soft sciences because they're not as easy to measure. And it is difficult to measure. I would say, and this is kind of what I said this morning too, the huge carrot is that you do see a shift in culture, a shift in the feeling in the buildings. Like, it changes. And to be honest, it used to change with certain kind of social justice programming, but our challenges have become so much bigger that those small things don't change it. And so what we do need these types of discussions in the classroom, woven throughout the curriculum, because that's where the change is going to happen. And what happens is you start to, I mean, that's not going to happen for everyone, right? But you start to question yourself, because part of the process in creating a curriculum is not just that you question what you're teaching, but you also question what you think about that teaching. And it's hard to measure, I would say, for sure. There is definitely not widgets, but there could be some long-term impacts if you're tracking climate data, is what I would say. But it is hard to put your finger on in a real hard science data-driven fashion.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? I'd like to hear from the other administrators if they have any comments, and also the public. We're at 7:44, so I think maybe another 10 minutes, and then we need to make some decisions about our time. Michelle, please.
Yeah, I'm just, excuse me. I'm hearing so many important pieces coming from every single person that has spoke, and I have my mom hat on, frankly. And I'm thinking, you know, Liz made the really valid point about these kids are coming and pouring in from different schools. We're talking about how we create change for our children, and we're talking about using the curriculum to bring us there. I think of diversity as inclusivity. I think about, how are we really supporting our kids in learning what being inclusive looks like, and where does that work start? And then there was the piece where Keith, you know, made the comment that, that when appropriate, they because they're attached to the high school, they're able to reach out to Mike Sozak, our restorative justice and practice coordinator at the high school, and he's able to come do work. But what's happening at the other schools that don't have that resource because they're not in the same building and they don't have that to utilize? And I'm a big fan of restorative practice work. I think that it starts when we get them, age 4, age 5. I think that's where teaching inclusivity can really begin. And I feel like this is just in hearing this conversation, and I know I want to just keep it really concise because there's a lot of people I'm sure want to speak, but I'm just hearing a need for us to really examine from a district-wide how we make this, that, like what Mark said, that uniform standard in all of our schools. And I do think it needs to start when they're very young. That's where that process starts. The curriculum supports what they're learning, and then they're learning how to process their feelings and process their differences. And it's all rolled up in one. So my 2 cents. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Before I go to the public, I just want to make a couple of comments. I don't know what people are going to say or what they're going to think, but I just want to ask people to keep their remarks to 2 minutes if they can, and to address the chair, not other individuals, if you should feel in that way. And no personal or unsubstantiated accusations, please. So just some guidelines for how we talk to each other at board meetings. Jamie and then Lana.
I think I saw Nancy Weiss before me, David.
Okay, Nancy, go ahead. They're different order
Sorry.
across my screen.
Thank you. Sorry, Amy, you could have gone first. I just wanted to bring up something that I think was on Thomas's screen, and I'm not sure, David, that it was about if we don't have a diverse pool of candidates starting the search again. And my only issue with that is
Nancy, I'm going to ask you if that's going to come up, we're going to talk about recruiting. And that's kind of really a different topic altogether than the curriculum that we're talking about, and making ourselves, creating a culture of holding each other accountable. So I'm going to ask you to hold that one and stay with the main topic.
My only statement would be that we started with that conversation and then we switched to curriculum without any chance for questions.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to have to come back at another time to that conversation.
Okay, I'll hold my comment then.
Thanks. Jamie?
I really appreciated, Michaela, what you said about the long-term commitment to this work. I know a number of us at the Putney Central School are really excited about, as parents, how to support equity and inclusion work. And a number of us are seeking out parents at other schools who are committed to this work, which led to the forming of the Parents and Caregivers for Equity group that's meeting monthly now. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, how can parents like myself keep showing up to kind of hold the space with our kids, with the teachers and the administration, to have this work continue moving forward? Because sometimes it's not clear as a parent what our role can be in this process. When we're committed to it, we are doing our own work and trying to find each other.
Thank you. Lana and then Deb Cardane.
I wanted to thank you all. This has been such an amazing and lush and nuanced conversation, and I'm really excited about the work that's being done. And I think this conversation brings us back to the need to have women of color in positions of leadership, and to have women of color and diverse voices throughout the school and positions of leadership, whether it be teachers or just, in your daily lives. There's one thing that we say at Youth Services is that relationships are the intervention. And it's one thing to hear about Black Lives Mattering, and it's another to have Black people in your life. Unfortunately, a fact that we have to contend with in this country is that racism is embedded within the structure of society. All one needs to do to perpetuate racism is to do nothing. Racism is inaction. Anti-racism is action. It requires hard work and reflection. sorry. It also requires for us to make conscious decisions about those that we choose for positions of power, leadership in our community. We need to consciously elect and place diverse people into leadership positions. We have to hold ourselves accountable for our failure to do so up until this point and commit to changing that fact. So I think that the only way that we're really going to change, microaggressions and racism within our schools is to change the environment that our children are learning within. And that starts with the school board. It starts, with the administrators and the teachers. And then we're able to have real sustainable change. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb?
Thank you, David. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to some of what Mark said and what Michaela said. From my perspective, so much of what we're doing supports and parallels that work specifically around talking to each other and our kids talking to each other. The curriculums that we're piloting this year hold that right at their center, and not only guiding teachers through developing norms in classrooms for kids to be able to talk to each other, but then also, and not just about surface things, but hard conversations about human rights, but also leading towards kids being able to talk to each other independently. So embedded in the curriculum that we're really trying to embrace with our teachers holds that goal of having hard conversations and building kids' skills in being able to hold those conversations even independently away from teachers over time. So this is a really, really rich conversation, and I thank you for facilitating it. Thanks.
Thanks, Deb. I'm not seeing any more hands, so I'm going to kind of see if we want to move along. We're getting close to 8 o'clock, and I wonder if people would be willing. We've got some more business to actually carry out. I wonder if we want to add additional 10 minutes to our meeting and have a few more comments and then talk about next steps, if that's acceptable.
I move adding 15 minutes.
Thank you, Thomas. It's moved to add 15 minutes to our clock this evening. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, was that
Liz.
Liz?
Yep.
Thank you, Liz. Moved and seconded to add 15 minutes to our time. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll go till 8:15. Jamie Contois.
I meant my statement in a question to Michaela about how parents can continue to show up to support staff and administrations in this work and continue to find each other to do that.
Oh, I was wondering, I was like, is that for me?
Hey, though, Michaela.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like that is a group answer. I don't think that I can answer that question alone. I think that each building has its own makeup and different entry points. So it's hard for me to say that there's a universal way to do that. I think for sure showing up would be great. I think that one of the things that we started 2 years ago is really trying to connect all the schools. And I think that you mentioned this and Ruby mentioned this to me, that it's hard because it doesn't feel like it's for you if it's in Brattleboro. But we kind of pick Brattleboro because we want people from all the schools to come. But just thinking about that and strategizing and get people out, because I know it's hard because of the pandemic, but we started this before the pandemic. And the only way we could get families to show up is to make sure their kids were performing. So we would have these performances. And so it would just be like whatever class, like, so it might be like 3rd grade from Green Street and like 4th grade from Guilford. So it would just be those parents that showed up to whatever the event is they were performing. But really thinking about how we could work together. This is my thinking, to build a district-wide community that's kind of more cohesive. I think that would go far for us, but it's a hard hurdle. And so we just it's like we're like trying to build it so they will come. So I'm like, ooh, district movie night. It's like everybody I know in the district comes. And I think Jackie came and brought her kid. But so that's one thing that I can think of for sure. that will foster the kind of community that you're talking about, where people know each other, people interested in the social justice aspect will find each other. And I think that what you're talking about is something we need to work towards. I mean, their leadership councils, I don't really know how that works in terms of each building. I don't know the details of that, so someone else would have to speak to that. But I for sure think that we should be building in more possibilities. And I think that as the pandemic comes down, parents and families will be let back in the buildings, and we'll go back to our literacy nights and other things that can help us make connections. But I'll get back to you. I'll keep a running list. And I don't know if anyone else wants to answer that question.
Deborah Stanford, I saw you, luckily you're on my screen. There are about 40 people that aren't, and if they're waving, I can't see them, but if people could raise their hands, I actually will see that. But go ahead, Deborah.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the way to raise my hand, but I'll fix that. It's on the bottom of my screen, no doubt.
Right, under reactions, but we won't spend time on that now. Go ahead, please.
Perfect. So Michaela talked about students and the way they learn and the way they progress from one stage to the next. And it has to be a spiraling effect in terms of their education. And I think about my processing through so many of these issues, because as a woman of color, I also have to consider what my biases are and what I walk into the classroom with, and how I learned from my students and what their approach is to a moral dilemma, let's say in a piece of literature. And I take away from that, and I have to go and talk to trusted colleagues about my reaction. And I go back into the classroom and readdress it. As a person of color, professional development is spiraling for me. It never ends. And when I think about my peers who are people of color, we're the ones who always show up at these workshops, not the ones that are mandated by the school, but because, as Michaela said, we're hurting. It sometimes really hurts to come to work every day, not because of the kids, but because of the bureaucracy around us, because of the microaggressions from our office mates. So I think about colleagues who say, oh, I went to that workshop. I went to that 3-day event. Oh, I did it. Everything's fine. That's not how, what I know, people of color, and I shouldn't speak as a generality, that's not how I feel. I need to go back again and again. Even the same workshops are always different. My reading list grows, but I need to connect with people and discuss what I've read. So the professional development is really on the shoulders of adults, and then it trickles down. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Emily?
I forgo my comments. Thank you, Deborah.
Well, I think maybe we can move on to the rest of our agenda. I want to just make a couple of points. It's interesting that we started off or early in the meeting hearing about how we used to do a Black Lives Matter Day, and it's expanded. There used to be a gallery walk, and there were these activities that went on, but it was a day, and now it's a week, and now it's moved to a week. And now we're talking about the K-12 culture. And I think that indicates we're on the right path. And I think that from what Michaela and Keith said, the model they described of using those standards, the teaching social justice standards, and working with teams of teachers and creating those conversation spaces and those opportunities for people to work together is a really good model. And what I'd like to suggest is that we ask, we're going to meet again on March 1st, so that we have 3 weeks in between. One of those weeks is a vacation week, but that we ask Mark to meet with the administration and with the other principals, and Michaela and anyone else that really could contribute to the process, and bring us on March 1st a proposal for how to, what we need to do, and some strategies toward creating, as Mark said, creating a culture of holding each other accountable. And as Emily pointed out, an assessment system, a method of actually tracking the developments, and that we look at that K through 12. The middle school is going to be working, in this model, and a lot will be learned that probably can be scaled out to other school, to the high school in particular. The elementary schools already have lots of activities going on that are in the same world of experience of pedagogy and social emotional learning. So there's a good solid basis. We saw a bunch of that earlier in the meeting. So I think my suggestion for the board, and I'd like to hear people's comments about this, is to, instead of saying, oh, this is a great conversation, let's do it again. Let's actually ask for a concrete proposal and some ideas about how to make this happen, how to go about it, what we need to do, what we need to change. How do we make this a priority? We've got, your only priority means one, but we have lots of priorities. And how do we get this on the top of the heap? How do we make this the focus? Because changing culture is what really has to happen for all of our students to be able to live. For real equity, we have to change the culture. So I'm just curious if the board thinks that that's a reasonable next step to ask Mark to put some time in, and with his staff to put some time into bringing proposals to the March 1st meeting.
I think
Sean?
that makes good sense, and I would encourage them to use the notes from the social justice meeting as a basis to kick off their conversation and to come up with an action plan from those notes.
Thanks, Tim. Sean and then Thomas.
Actually, our next meeting is March 8th, not March 1st.
Our next meeting would be March 22nd, but it's during vacation week, so we're moving it to March 1st. I mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting. Some members weren't here, but I'll send it out. We have to find another day for that meeting on the 22nd. Thomas?
Just to piggyback on what Tim said regarding looking at the Social Justice Committee meeting notes, with regards to hiring, there was a great one, specifically a set of 3 questions that should be asked whenever there is an application being researched. Explain your experience working with historically marginalized groups. What have you learned from these experiences? Include times you have made mistakes. And 2, describe your framework for equity and social justice in the classroom or workplace and its origin. And the 3rd one, where did you hear about this job posting? Now, with those questions, we would get a lot more insight into how we're reaching people, and we would find out a lot more about what these people's, what these people feel about social justice, and it'll give us a lot to go on. So I wanted to highlight that particular part as one of the greatest parts that we found in our discussion.
Thank you, Thomas. And that reminds me that I also wanted to suggest that another, after we're done with this part, but suggest that we move the recruiting conversation to that meeting as well, because obviously we're not going to be able to get to that tonight. Yep. Emily?
I love your suggestion, David.
Thank
I just wanted to add one thing to it, which is, or just one thought that I had. So after what Deborah said, which was she showed up to all the meetings and, essentially, not putting words in your mouth, Deborah, but my interpretation of what you said was that, this is your life. And so it's important, and it should, the hope is that it would be important to everyone in our district. And I guess it made me think a little bit. We do I teach Indian medicine. My husband's from India. We run an Indian cultural retreat center, and people are often asking us as they go through trainings, maybe like a 200-hour training in Indian medicine. They want it. First of all, they want to change their whole life. They're starting to adopt habits and lifestyle practices and cook differently and all these great things. And once they leave us after 200 hours, I talk to them in like a month or so, and they've all fallen back to regular patterns, like nobody's really doing that much. And I chat with them and try to figure out how they can start to adopt, one habit at a time and really make change, because change takes a long time. And I guess when I heard your kind of suggestion, David, on where we go next and maybe what Mark can start to plan is like, I really just think of like how to change a culture is how to change habits. So habits are habitual, obviously, but they're daily. So what daily habits does each teacher have in the classroom, or do we have as a culture in our whole district that allow us to make change? And it could be one thing. I don't have a suggestion for habits. I can talk in my own realm about Indian medicine, what I suggest for people, but that doesn't pertain to our conversation. But I do really think of it as creating better habits. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you. It's a really good example. Okay, well, I'm going to suggest that I see Deb Gass is here and we have some business we need to do with early ed services. The next item is well, Jamie, is it brief? Could you be brief, please?
I'm so sorry, I have to leave the meeting and I wanted to make sure somebody mentioned the candidate forum for the school board before the meeting ended.
Oh, go.
The Commons and the Reformer will put a piece out in the coming days inviting, all the candidates have been invited for the upcoming school board election. 5 candidates for 3 seats. And so it's very exciting to have an opportunity for folks to come out. We will, folks have been invited out for this next Wednesday, February 16th, 6:30 to 8 will be a Zoom forum. Cindy Jerome will be the moderator from the town of Dummerston. And if folks have questions, they're welcome to ask David probably to reach me if they don't know how to reach me.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, and they can also reach Jeff Potter at the Commons.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. And thanks for doing the work to put that together. It's the second year in a row, or second time in a row. Yeah, thank you. Okay, next is the sexual abuse investigation update. I want to share the document that was released to the press last week, I think in a couple of different tranches. I'm not sure quite why, but at any rate, this is a statement from the district board, and it'll be, if it's not on our website now, it will be tomorrow. And it lays out the process for people who wish to report sexual abuse among that they suffered or know of or have knowledge of from in their experiences with our staff. And the what I wanted to point out particularly is that there is a website, an email, and a phone number to call. And the we talked about this, I think, in previous meeting, and it was a long article in the Commons and a shorter one today in the Reformer, and I suspect that it will show up in social media sites in the near future. So I just wanted to get that, make sure everybody saw that, and we'll have it on our website tomorrow if it's not already there. Mindy, you have a question about that?
Yes, I have a question. I had, I'm Mindy Haskins Rogers. I'm a BUHS alum. So I had, I looked through the press release and I had just one request. And that is that as it reads, it's clear that, and I did mention this to the Communications Council, it's clear that that the attorney might give the board information in the event that a report triggers mandated reporting. But if you could add a single sentence or statement that clarifies what the board will do with that information, you know, something that just says the board will release that information only to appropriate agencies, then it might reassure people, because it's given currently as an exception to the confidentiality. And so there's this implication that, well, we know, I mean, I'm a teacher, I know what the board is going to do with that information, but a member of the public might not understand that it doesn't mean that the name is going to be publicized. It just means it's going to be given to the appropriate agency. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I don't think that it's something that we don't know what we're going to do. It depends on the information. So I think
But you're not going to
I think we're going to
publicize
leave
it.
it. We're going to leave it as it is for now. I understand your point, but I think we'd leave it as it is for now.
But could I ask you to clarify what you mean that you don't know what you're going to do with the names if the attorney
No, I
has
can't
something that
clarify.
you
We don't
can't
know
say-
until we see, we don't know what information. We're going to get names, but there's also going to be evidence or results from the investigation that are going to come with it, which is going to determine what we're going to do. So we can't say any more than that.
I'm talking about the exception that you give to confidentiality in which you state that certain information might trigger the mandated reporting. And that in that case, the attorney would give the reporter's name to the board. It seems pretty clear that mandated reporting involves just giving that information to appropriate agencies and not publicizing it in some way.
Exactly.
So that's all I wanted clarified, is if you could clarify that the mandated reporting only means the board would report it to appropriate agencies, not that you would in any way publicize those names.
Great. We'll take that under consideration. Thanks.
Thank you.
Under new business, we have a early Head Start staff retention bonus policy. One of the nicer parts of being on a school board, when Deb finds little pockets of money, she always turns it over to her staff. And I think we get another chance to do that here.
Thank you, David. And I'm assuming that everybody has seen the proposed policy. I think Barb sent it out. So this is coming in light of a couple of things. One is that, as we all know, there's a national shortage of teachers, and that is increasingly more challenging in the early childhood education field. We have 4 classrooms currently that we cannot open because we can't find staff, teaching staff. So with this influx of money that has come our way through the pandemic, the federal money particularly, but also federal to state, EES has some dollars with suggestions from the Office of Head Start at the federal level that we might use that money, and we have actually used it once in December, to promote staff retention. So the folks who stay with us would actually be rewarded with a bump in pay over a period of time would help keep them on board with us. And along with that came the suggestion that we might have a policy in place to support that. And so I am coming to you tonight with a written policy that I put together that would give us the backing to provide in staff or incentive bonuses, staff retention bonuses. We have these funds available, and as I said, it's a combination of state and federal money. That is one-time money. But I can see that this would probably carry out. We have enough to do probably 2 or 3 more rounds of bonuses, and the criteria for the amounts of money are determined by the number of years of service. And that criteria was actually designed by our policy council. So I'm bringing this recommendation to you with the backing of policy council, and Liz can certainly speak to that if you would like to hear from her. But I'm actually asking that you would adopt this policy. So
And this is a policy council policy or a school district policy?
Well, anytime EES creates and adopts a policy, it really needs to be approved by policy council and then the board.
Right. So we ratify your policy as the governance body. Okay, thanks. Liz, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, in one of, I think it was December or October or November, the board, when I sent the report to the board, I mentioned this, that this was what was going to happen in December, and then end of March, and the end of June.
Yes.
So.
And maybe even more, because we have quite a pot of money to do this.
not having filled all the positions, it makes sense.
I can say that since we issued that bonus or staff retention bonus in December, the turnover has stabilized. And folks know that this is something we're considering. And I don't want to say that's why they're not leaving, but I think that it definitely is an incentive, definitely keeping people on board. So we're no longer seeing a loss in numbers. We're starting to gain.
Great. And Jackie is former policy council member and parent.
Thanks. Just a quick question, Deb. Does the bonus extend to the home visitors?
It goes to everyone. Yes.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. So I believe, I don't remember the last time I looked at that policy, so I can't really recite it, Deb, but can you?
I think I might be able to pull it up.
You can share your screen too. That would really be helpful.
Okay. It's on my screen.
So down at the bottom, there's a green square at the bottom of your screen that says share screen. And there's a little green arrow next to it, I think.
Okay, let me minimize this.
See.
Okay, yep, okay.
So click that and see if it comes
All
up.
right, here we go. Can everybody see that?
No.
Not yet. I think there's a little green arrow next to the big one, and I think that may be the thing you need to.
All right, let's see. So share screen and it's green.
Okay, click it.
Yep.
Did it say your screen is being, here comes your screen or anything like that?
No, it's, oh, wait a minute, maybe this will help.
There you go. That's it. Don't touch anything.
Okay, there we go. All right, so here's the policy. And so when I did, can you all see it?
Yes, staff retention bonus policy.
All right, so though the first two paragraphs were actually pulled right from the information memorandum that came to us from the Federal Administration for Children and Families. When they gave us some guidance about how to use the funds, I actually pulled that language. So there's kind of the preemptive rationale. And then I continued on with talking about the dedication of our staff and the fact that we are no different than many other childcare programs in the country, and that we continue to highly value the dedication and commitment of our staff. And we actually have a staff wellness goal in our EES strategic plan. So I linked it to that. And then, and under one of those, under that goal, one of the objectives is talking about, promoting, raising staff salaries and really paying attention to the quality of life issues for our staff, which of course also mean financial support. And so we're wanting to use this to uphold staff retention, encouraging them to remain with us, especially through this pandemic. And then for an undetermined length of time, because we'd like to keep this going for as long as possible. And with available funds, we would provide periodic staff retention bonuses. And then I gave you the breakdown there, the increments. So the first year, we give generous hiring bonuses right now. So it's about $1,000 for onboarding. What we do is we split that over 2 pay periods in the first year. So an employee joins us if they pass their 3-month probationary period, they get $500. And then when they've completed 12 months of employment, they get the other 5. And then from that point forward, of increments based on the years 1 to 5, and then a bump 5 to 10, and then finally 10 plus. So in December, we were able to give those who were with us from 1 to 5 years received $900. In the next tier, years 5 to 10, they received $1,500, and then 10 years or more received $2,000.
Great. Thank you. So I'm so glad you had that, had that there. So could I have a motion, please, to approve the policy council policy on staff retention bonuses as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Liz. Second?
I will second.
Thank you, Thomas. Moved and seconded to approve the policy as presented. All those in favor, please indicate by unmuting and saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you, everyone.
And that is it for our business for the evening. We have an executive session. I think, Mark, this says labor relations agreements with employees, but I think this is the valuation rather than, or are we talking about the labor agreement as well? Okay, so under 1 VSA 313A1B, labor relations agreements with employees and evaluation of an employee. I need a motion to enter executive session at 8:21.
So made.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Did you get that, Wendy?
I did. Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
We invite the superintendent to join us. Mark, will we be taking any action after executive session?
Yes, the hope. will be-
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will, so if people would like to stay around after executive session, please don't do anything and I will put you in the waiting room. And if you get bumped, you can just reload the meeting and come back and I'll move you back out of the waiting room after the executive session is over. I would ask everyone else who doesn't care to stay around until executive session is over to please end the meeting now. Okay, we rose from executive session at 8:36 p.m. I would ask for a motion to approve the negotiated agreement as presented.
So moved.
So made.
Michelle, I believe, moved it and second by Thomas. Any discussion? Actually, we can't, it's still confidential. All those in favor, please indicate by unmuting and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. And that concludes our business for the evening. Ann, would you take us out, please?
Mr. Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Don't we have to go back?
Back where?
Oh, to the, okay, never mind.
Okay. Yeah, moved and seconded to adjourn at 8:36, 8:37. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And we are adjourned.